What do you think is the next frontier in universal or inclusive design?
I think we need to figure out how to increase the adoption of universal design. And to do that, we need to increase capacity of educators.
So for me, I will define the universal as like the access for all.
We see it as a design process that enables and empowers a diverse population by improving human performance, health and wellness, and social participation.
Hello and welcome to Connected. I'm Divya Gopalan. Have you ever bumped your knee when getting out of a car, found yourself tripping over stairs because of uneven steps? Or maybe you've grappled with the seemingly simple task of putting coins into a ticket machine. It's clear that people designing the things that surround us may not fully consider the diverse needs of all users. Designing with accessibility in mind has long been the standard, but there's a broader vision that goes beyond. That's universal design. Now, the term was coined by the late American architect Ronald Mace. He was in a wheelchair from the age of 9 after contracting polio. His experience navigating the campus facilities at North Carolina State University's School of Design led him to focus his career on accessibility and eventually become a pioneer in the field. He describes it as design that's usable by all people to the greatest extent possible without the need for adaptation or specialized design. Now, among the 7 principles are equitable use, flexibility in use, simple and intuitive, and tolerance for error. And to help us gain an all-access look at the topic, we're joined today by Chao Hsing-yi. She's an assistant professor from the program of Digital Humanities and Creative Industry at National Chung Hsing University in Taichung here in Taiwan. And from Buffalo, New York, Dr. Edward Steinfeld, founder and director of the Center for Inclusive Design and Environmental Access in the School of Architecture and Planning at the University at Buffalo. Thank you both so much for joining us. It's great to have you on the program. I'm going to start with you, Hsin-yi. Do you have a personal definition of universal design? And if so, what is that?
Okay, I also know the 7 universal design principles, but for me, I think that it's mainly for the functions, for production or spatial designs. But in culture aspect, we may pay more attention on how to engage or understand the story of the collection or artwork in museum or art galleries. So for me, I will define the universal as like the access for all. And we also in Taiwan, we will say only the environmental has barriers, but no one has disabilities. So I think that's my definition.
That's a really lovely definition. Edward, you founded the Idea Center in 1984. That's a year prior to the birth of the term universal design. So how does that align with the ethos of universal design?
Well, originally the name of the center was different. So we changed the name to the Center for Inclusive Design and Environmental Access, probably in the early 90s. I can't remember exactly when. We've always looked at what we do as being inclusive design, but universal design is the term that seems to have caught on with professionals around the world.
So Hsing-yi, what inspired you to start your journey with universal design?
Okay, actually my understanding about universal design is come from my exposures. The design of accessible space during my doctoral program in architecture. That's also my research on how the visual impaired people perceive the environmental and the development of our learning and experiments. So in Taiwan, actually I try to use the universal design principle and to help the visual impaired people to understand the information around the world.
That's really interesting. And I do want to talk more about how Taiwan is falling into line or trying to include the principles of universal design as a whole. But before I go to that, Ed, what made you focus your life work on universal design or this concept?
Well, I started in this area as a graduate student where I studied gerontology, or the study of aging, at the same time I was studying architecture. And so I was exposed to the term barrier-free design or accessible design. When I got exposed to that, I realized that there was a significant problem with older people. All of us, as we get older, eventually will need some kind of supports in the environment. So to me, the idea of universal design made a lot of sense when I heard about it. And I was a colleague of Ron Mace's. We did work together, and we hung out together. We were friends. And, I remember way back when he started talking about, well, really accessible design or barrier-free design is really a compensatory activity. It's fixing a problem. But if you design for everybody to begin with and design for disability or other marginal issues, then you start to think about design for the whole population, and you won't really need to think about solving problems because they shouldn't exist if everybody is on board with it.
Right, and it's that idea that it should be all-encompassing rather than meeting just certain needs. This voice will be quite familiar to you, Ed. Since 1985, significant progress has been made to facilitate greater social participation for people with disabilities. So, how have the principles of universal design fared in the face of real-world challenges? Well, here's the take from Jordana Maisel, Associate Professor in the Department of Urban and Regional Planning at the University at Buffalo.
I think where the field is now is much more advanced than, as one would hope, in the 90s. And I think the field, jumping ahead 30 plus years, the field of inclusive design is far more grounded in research and evidence base. And it is not just consensus based anymore, which I think adds some legitimacy and validity to the work. About 10 years ago, our center developed a newer definition of inclusive design. So we see it as a design process that enables and empowers a diverse population by improving human performance, health and wellness, and social participation. And so those three outcomes at the end, the human performance, health and wellness, and social participation, I think make it somewhat unique from that original definition and the principles.
Ed, what would you qualify as the biggest advancement in the definition and application of universal design since it was coined or became perhaps a field of study?
There are really three. One is the scope. As Jordana pointed out, we include health and wellness and social participation explicitly in our definition of universal design. And in the earlier definition and what was used behind the principles, it was really focused on function. And we think we need to think about preventing disability, and we also need to think about going beyond function to ensure that people are accepted in the world, and we provide the support for that, and also can engage fully in community life. So I think that's one big change. And the other one is the idea that that Jordana expressed very clearly, is that we can measure the outcomes. So we need to in the principles of universal design, we're all about design strategies. And I was one of the authors of the principles. And but that didn't help us to identify when we've achieved some significant progress in universal design. So being able to measure the outcomes is important. And we developed 8 goals that are measurable. And then finally, the as the definition Jordana gave, of using process, because ultimately it's all about a way of thinking, and you're constantly trying to find new ideas and innovate.
Hsin-yi, you briefly spoke about it, but your area of research is cultural participation for the visually impaired. What do you think is the most impactful application you have seen so far in Taiwan?
If we mentioned about the technology, then can I say the application I developed in Taiwan? Then, because that is an application for our museum, then in 2015, I started work in National Taiwan Museum of Fine Arts. And I am a curator, but I also need to do many things like develop the technology. So I accept the one duty is to conduct how to let people with disabilities can enjoy the exhibition through technology. So in the first year, I want to combine the function of the visual impaired people and the hearing impaired people. So they can use the same application, and you can download the application into your smartphone, or you can borrow the guide device in the entrance counter. Then you can hear how the application guides you from the entrance to the exhibition room. So you can hear the audio description, but when you approach the artwork, then the sensor will auto-trigger the content into your device or your smartphone. Then you can hear, or you can just watch the sign language video by yourself.
It would be great to see that rolled out much wider, not just in museums and galleries, but also for use and various use where, where the independence of someone who's visually impaired is often compromised because they can't get the help they need or the visual aids they need. I want to move it a bit forward to somewhere like Japan, where it's almost widely spread when it comes to design. And I want you to listen to this. Yu Hongyi is the founder of Universal Design Workshop in Taipei, and she explains how Japan has embraced universal design at a national level.
07年的时候去参访，就发现日本已经食衣住行娱乐都看得见通用设计了，各大企业都有通用设计单位跟研发人员，那我们还没有。甚至他们公部门还有通用设计推进室，就是我们离人家太远了。
Ed, how does the US compare when it comes to Japan and how it's embraced almost from the stationery you use to taking a train to basically many things that you really wouldn't think about would require universal design, but actually do?
Japan has always been ahead of the game, I think, in universal design of products. The United States product manufacturers have not adopted universal design ideas as much as they have in Japan. In fact, in Japan, even years ago, it was actually part of a political campaign for one of the cities and states, I believe. What we call states, I think they call them prefectures in Japan. But I think in the United States, we're further ahead with buildings and transportation, because we have been working on that since 1968. And so the United States has made a lot of progress with public buildings and transportation systems. And every country seems to have a different way of, different part of the industrial sector that seems to embrace this more. But I do agree that cultural facilities like museums seem to really get into this more than other sectors of the
right.
economy.
I'm glad you brought up the idea of policy regulations, and so this is where I take it to you, Hsin-yi. You've given us an example where it's been almost an individual effort to create a space or an environment that is accessible for all. But how much in Taiwan does it trickle down into the government level, when they're creating regulations or when they're giving directives on building? Is there much conversation about it?
Okay. Actually, I don't think the Taiwan government pay much attention on universal design in early days. But I think that in 2008, the Minister of the Interior of Taiwan established a guideline for the design of barrier-free facility in building. So they require the new building need to compare with a barrier-free design. But the regulations are more challenging for the early public constructions. Like in Taipei, the Taipei Metro barrier-free facility is called according to the current regulation, but they are in total the 91 the non-complete areas after review in 2000 of just last year. So they will be required to improve by the 2026. But in the culture aspect, I think until 2019, we have the Culture Fundamental Act. Then the Minister of the Culture try to give many money to the museum and art gallery, try to help the people with a disability, and like they can train your volunteer to understand how to talk in audio description for the visual impaired visitors. And also, you need to make the many sign language video for the hearing impaired visitors. So I think in cultural aspect or in the public environment, I think recently the Taiwan government pay more attention on it.
Okay, but Taiwan is going to, and Ed mentioned this earlier, but Taiwan and many parts of the world are going to be facing a serious need. Now, take a look at this. Taiwan, along with neighboring nations such as Japan and South Korea, is one of the world's fastest aging countries. Data provided by Taiwan's National Development Council shows that 1/5 of the nation's population will be 65 years and older next year. Now, this number is expected to continue rising, reaching a whopping 42% by the year 2070. So, Ed, if you're not thinking of it now, you will have to think of it later. The need for accessibility and the importance of universal design. And so how much thought is going into that, especially as most of us are going to get older and need it?
Well, you're raising a very, very important point, and it's important to it's really critical to realize that regulations on accessible design or barrier-free design really they're part of universal design, but they're not universal design in the true sense of it. They only cover really minimal requirements, and the problem is that when we only stick to the minimum, then we're not going to address these issues of aging. So, to just take an example, hearing loss is very common for older people, and solving the problems of the totally deaf person with sign language or with printed word do not help a person who still relies on hearing but needs a better acoustic environment, lower background noise, better sound legibility, better speech legibility. These are things that are not covered in the accessibility codes. Another example is lighting. So minimum standards for lighting illumination may be present in the codes, but older people need twice the illumination that younger people do. So, and they also are very much more sensitive to glare. So universal design extends beyond the regulations, and it's very important to understand that there's a difference.
I want you to watch this next film here. Our producer, Fred Xie, went to the Eden Social Welfare Foundation's Touching Life Festival, which gave the public a chance to experience and understand the importance of accessible design. Take a look.
The event held at Taipei's Da'an Forest Park aims to address Taiwan's critical need for accessibility, paying special attention to the experiences of the physically and mentally impaired.
因为我们现在照顾现在的他，可能就是照顾未来的我们，所以我们为什么要办这个活动，一直延续下去，也是其中一个原因。那在办这个活动过程中，我们发觉其实最重要还是跟教育有关，所以我们每次办这个活动，我们就会邀请这附近的学校的学生啊、团体啊，或者是企业一起来参与我们这个体验的活动。
The festival celebrated its 10th anniversary in 2023, offering an immersive experience that allowed attendees a glimpse into the lives of those with disabilities.
全黑的时候就有点没有安全感，很恐惧，就要用那个棍子这样子敲才知道地上有没有障碍物。
对身障人士来讲，他能够自由的来这里活动，而不是靠别人来协助他，这个才叫自由。
Experts say that while Taiwan has made strides in inclusive or universal design, there still is much room for improvement.
的确，我们不断在进步，包含扶手的设计、无障碍厕所的设置，包含身心障碍者就业权利、就医权利、就学权利，都在进步。但我觉得我们可能还有一些地方可以更好。
Well, make sure you check out the full version on our YouTube channel. Now, Hsin-yi, as the last soundbite there was saying that there are so many ways that Taiwan can do better. So what are your expectations for the future application of universal design here in Taiwan?
I think that Taiwan faces a very big problem is because we only have the small island, but we have the dense population. So I think the public environment is very difficult to offer the safety, the road for the wheelchair, the people with a wheelchair. Especially we have too many scooters and motorcycle on the road. So we always have not enough the parking lot. So even the government try to plan the safety, the pedestrian, and for the people, the normal people or the people with a disability. I really expect the government should pay more attention or support as much the government can support money to build the public transportation to help every city or every county can try to reduce the number of scooter and motorcycle and even the cars.
I think that's another aspect of universal design is it has to be applied differently. And that's one of the reasons why the term universal isn't such a great term, because it implies the same thing everywhere. And that's really not really going to work, because the density of cities in Taiwan is much higher than the density of cities in the U.S. And some countries have major development, lack of developed infrastructure in rural areas, where in other countries that's not so much of a problem. So every country is really going to face a different kind of challenges, and I think it's up to local people to figure out how to do that.
And given that the key here is giving people their independence, letting them move around and function on their own without having to rely on others, and empowering them as such. So Ed, just to round this off, what do you think is the next frontier in universal or inclusive design, especially for the US?
That's a good question. I think that in the US, we have a lot of knowledge. It's just not being applied. The adoption of universal design is slow. It's the same kind of thing that happened with sustainable design. When I was going to school in the 60s, there were people who were advocating for sustainable design, but it took 30, 40 years before it finally caught on, maybe longer than that. And I think we need to figure out how to increase the adoption of universal design. And to do that, we need to increase capacity of educators. We have to teach the teachers of professionals, and we need to teach business leaders what universal design is all about, why it's important, and how to do it. And I think the video you showed of public education is important as well, because when people start demanding universal design, then there'll be more response from industry and from government.
Right. Well, just researching for this episode has got me thinking a lot more about the everyday things that I take for granted, and that we should be giving more thought for, more be design regulation or just pure, simple accessibility. I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. Edward Steinfeld, great to have you in the program. Thanks for speaking to us from Buffalo, New York in the US. And Chao, Hsing-yi, also fantastic to get your thoughts. Thank you for speaking to us from Taichung in Taiwan. And to our audience at home, if you'd like to join the conversation, do head over to our social media channels and leave a comment there. And if you're interested in exploring more issues across Taiwan, be sure to check out our YouTube channel and the TaiwanPlus website. Thank you for being with us. It's been good to have your company. Remember, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay connected.